Have we reached the stage of the Trump regime where they don't comply with federal court orders? I think two really bad federal court orders for the Trump administration, two really good orders. If you care about the dignity of people, the work that federal workers are engaged in, the rights of workers, the fact that human beings should not be treated cruelly, a good ruling for them. But these were two different orders, kind of one right after each other, saying that those probationary workers that the Trump regime and DOJ kind of ordered be fired, and they claimed that they were firing them for performance-related reasons. These federal rulings say not only was that an unlawful, unjust, improper termination, you've got to go and immediately rehire those people if they want to work again. And the rulings are basically on the same legal grounds that said, look, if you're going to get rid of those employees, you have the ability to, but you have to go through a reduction in force process where you analyze things and you don't do it in an arbitrary and capricious way, and you make it clear why you're doing this, the purposes, the goals, the objectives. You have to, believe it or not, speak to the people or let them know that that's the reason, versus just getting an email and saying you're fired for cause, which carries with it serious ramifications too for people's ability to get another job or to potentially get unemployment. So what's going to happen right now if the Trump regime is basically saying we're not going to hire these people? No federal judges. You can't force us to do things. I want to be very clear, though, as we go over this topic. Nationwide injunctions took place all the time under former President Biden's administration. What the MAGA Republicans would do on issues like student loan stuff when former President Biden was trying to help people with student loan debt, other like things for consumer help and erasing the bad debt with medical debt and all of these things that I think like help consumers. What would happen? These right-wing MAGA groups, they'd run to the Northern District of Texas. In the Amarillo division, you had Judge Kaczmarek, and this guy was like a machine at doing nationwide injunctions on basically all of Biden's policies, whether it was immigration or those types of things that I discussed. And the MAGA celebrated it. They loved Kaczmarek. It was part of their plan. And now that you have some law and order judges just saying, look, you can do this, but you got to follow the process. You can't lie and defame people and say they were fired for cause when they're not fired for cause. Now the regime, the Trump, taking a very different view of it. They have Caroline Leavitt. She's 27 years old, didn't go to law school, doesn't know what she's talking about. But here she is. Harry, I want to get your reaction to this because, look, obviously there's going to be a legal process, but, I think this is one of those showdowns where what if the Trump people say, no, we're not hiring these people. We're not reopening up our offices. Watch what Caroline Leavitt, chief propagandist for Trump, has to say. Let's play it.
Judge has ruled that tens of thousands of fired federal workers must be reinstated immediately. Okay, Karen, how are you going to fight that?
Well, let's talk about the absurdity of this, Stu. You have a single lower district court judge who ruled that all of these individuals need to be rehired, just usurping the executive authority of President Trump to fire federal workers. This cannot be allowed to happen. This ruling was unconstitutional. The White House and the Trump administration are prepared to fight back.
Harry, I wanted to give that primer because they were singing a very different tune a few months back when it came to what Kaczmarek was doing. The two judges, Judge Alsop in the Northern District of California, then there was a judge in Maryland as well. And the judge in Maryland's name, go to the order, Salty, and Harry, there you go. Judge Bretter, James Bretter, if I'm saying it right. Harry, what'd you make of that? What do you think's going to happen? What do you expect this process? How do you expect it to play out?
Yeah, because there are that statement, and you're so right. She has no idea what she's talking about. Imagine this is what courts do. They tell the executive when they haven't done it. And usurping executive authority, well, one could say, no, that's actually enforcing the law. That would be judicial review. So it's really cheeky. and really assertive. I'll get back to that in a second. In terms of the two rulings, they were slightly different rationales. One said, hey, OPM can't do this. You got to take it to the agencies. And the other said, hey, you have to jump through the hoops. But both of them, and Alsop in San Francisco was really strong on this, called out the administration's lies. They went, it's just as you say, it's so offensive that they are claiming that somehow these are individualized assessments of people's work deficiencies, and they're nothing of the sort. Everyone got this form letter. Thank you for your service. You are hereby terminated. And then the notion, so that now they go into court and first they do this kind of lying thing. The real question is what happens next? Because you can imagine like a normal administration, they comply. Nah, I'm not sure the odds of that. But then there are a kind of way of resisting with different problems. And in general, Ben, I think you get at the game from the start. There are so many ways that in the executive branch this has happened. Once they lower the boom this way, even if in some technical sense the people are, they get money and back wages and are made whole, they can't be made whole. You can't ever unscramble the eggs. Even if they were forced and the administration complied to let them back in, it would be into probably a place where someone else is sitting at their desk, or more likely the desk has just been scrapped in the fire sale that they're doing as they get rid of all the employees. In other words, in a real way on the ground, they have irrevocably and terribly harmed these people's lives. In a legal way, they have failed to comply a couple different fashions. And Alsop in particular, I mean, we'll see what happens, because he said first he totally slapped him around saying, it's disgusting basically that you would say this when it wasn't true. But then he ordered them to right away come up with names and who they're talking about. And he may have this oversight process where we will see. They have already filed a notice of appeal on this one in the Ninth Circuit, but they are going to try to push back on him in every way. And we're really starting, it's been all of 2 months, but we're really starting to look at, holy shit, is there a concrete possibility of actual disobedience by the administration of the courts? And at that point, we really are in a, full-on constitutional crisis. So we'll see. When she says something like, and of course she's just being fed, is Levitt a talking point, we're going to fight this. It could be that they're going to file an appeal and do what law-abiding governments do, or it could be that she's, been told, or it's been decided, within the government, they're going to actually be recalcitrant and say, screw you, and that's of course the kind of ultimate that everyone is beginning to wonder. Holy cow, is this where things are going?
It's an interesting showdown between Judge Alsop, of all judges, senior status, Northern District of California, well-respected judge, a no-nonsense judge. I remember you and I, before we did this take, I told you some of my war stories where as a young associate, I would be warned by the partners, like, if you're not prepared for Judge Alsop, he is going to rip you apart.
Yeah.
And it was, that was weighing in my mind as I was reading the transcript from this hearing, where, and Alsop does this thing where his bench is like 10 feet up, it seems like, we're like a basketball hoop. And he does this thing where he looks down as a lawyer, and
he dunks on you, as they say.
You're 3 feet away from him, which is not the usual position.
Right,
You're 3 feet, you look up, and he's looking down, and he at a status conference, which other judges sometimes would out 3 minutes, counsel, what's the status? He was treating it like a dispositive motion hearing, and he would have ruled, if I didn't have my facts straight, he probably would have dismissed the case had I not had it. So as I'm reading the transcript and seeing and hearing Alsop say, What about this? What about this? And the DOJ lawyers, they don't even know who's running Doge, basically. And so they're, and he's like, you're lying, you're a liar. And you can see the progression of this hearing that's not where he was initially maybe even going to go. But by the end of it, he's like, this is nonsense. You just treated these people like shit, basically.
Yeah,
and
well,
I see what you did.
demanded that the head of OPM showed up, and they defied him. They didn't. So that really got him very pissed off, indeed.
They didn't show up. Explain that to people.
He's. I mean, I've just said it. He wanted him to be deposed. Look, the basis of his holding was OPM. You can't do this. You're not the ones who can fire Secretary of Treasury and fire. This is Roosevelt kind of channeling Musk, and that was the base of his holding. But he wanted to know, what are the facts? Did you do it? That was his specific legal angle, and that's right. There was a written statement. They withdrew it. And they just said no, decided without. And yeah, he was apoplectic. Judges aren't used to being treated this way, but of course, the Trump administration, that's the way things are handled. Can I say one more quick thing, Ben, about the nationwide injunctions?
Of course.
I just want to say this is what they've done, so people understand the department's petition to the U.S. Supreme Court and birthright citizenship. They're saying this thing that you just mentioned, that when a judge rules, it should only apply to the district where the judge is. And you're exactly right. This is the trick that they embraced when they weren't in power. Matt Kaczmarek was a master of it. Get a little Eastern District of Texas. He's the only guy in the Amarillo division. Eileen Cannon did this too, the nationwide injunction. That's something that administrations on both sides have not been too happy about. But that's what's also figuring in here. Can one district court judge bind the country? And we'll see that playing out in the Supreme Court, perhaps, if they accept review.
It's one of those things where we'll see as the law develops. Now, the Trump administration the regime does not want nationwide injunctions when they utilized them with former President Biden. Ultimately, if the Supreme Court says that these nationwide injunctions are ultimately kind of improper, provided we can save the democracy and move on to the next step, it will be a massive destruction of one of the right wing's toolkits. Right. Big thing that they did to really destroy the Biden agenda. Because I think about all those Biden policies that would have been enacted, but for the Kaczmarek nationwide injunctions, which, the things that Biden were doing were helping the people, and the MAGA stopped that. The things that Trump is doing right now, firing these workers, firing veterans, destroying people's lives, they're upset that there's nationwide injunctions helping the people again. So it's all reversed and topsy-turvy and upside down, but we're going to cover it every step of the way. Where I get my legal news from, it's Harry Litman's Talking Feds YouTube, Talking Feds podcast, and Talking Feds Substack. You got to go to the best, the expert who knows what he's talking about, Harry Litman. Subscribe to all of those. Subscribe here as well, but definitely subscribe to Harry. Thanks, Harry.
Thanks, Ben. Hang in there.
Can't get enough Meidas? Check out the Meidas Plus Substack for ad-free articles, reports, podcasts, daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, and more. Sign up for free now at MeidasPlus.com.